Welcome back to the Thriving Mom Summit. I'm the host and creator of the summit, Kerri Thompson, and I help overwhelmed moms create sustainable rhythms and routines so that they can have more peace, priority based productivity, and purpose. Today, I'm excited to have Amanda Wilson joining us. Amanda is an elementary teacher turned homeschool mom of four who is also a Christian blogger at maestramom.com and author of Heading into Homeschool. She helps moms who are striving to raise awesome kids and looking for a made to order education so they and their kids can thrive. She passionately believes that all moms make the best teachers and anyone can learn to homeschool. She's all about kids, and when not writing, you'll probably find her singing with her littles, possibly very loudly. Amanda can be found on social at Maestra Mom One. Amanda, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, good morning. I'm so glad to be here with you on Thriving Mom Summit. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. And I'm going to dive into our topic today,
All right.
homeschooling. And my first question for you is how much time does homeschooling really take? And what does your involvement as mom look like?
That's a great question. So it can really vary depending on the age of your child and how many kids you have in the home and that kind of thing. Homeschooling is naturally going to be a little bit shorter than your public school day, and that makes sense if you think about it because you're going to take out things like your lunchtime, your transportation, arrival and dismissal, waiting in line, things like bathroom breaks, or just walking to the cafeteria or to the art room, all those transitions. So if I pull out all of that, then really I would say the general rule of thumb is have about 4 hours a day of your academics. But that's going to vary depending again on the age of your child. So if you have little ones, they're going to need more direct teach from mom, so a little bit more of mom's time. But you're going to need to plan on probably like an hour to an hour and a half a day of mom time. But that may really be all they need. So if you have like just someone starting, say kindergarten or pre-K, first grade, right in there somewhere, they probably only need about an hour and a half a day. They can get all their academics done. But as you move into early elementary, like first through third grade, they're going to need a little bit more. So probably count on around 2 hours ish, maybe three. In late elementary, a little bit more. So like 3 to 5 hours. And then as they get older, at junior high and high school, I have one up there now, and it takes a good solid, I would say 6 hours a day when they get older. And that it'll depend on how heavy of a coursework that they're taking, of course. But mom's involvement really doesn't change that much because they need me more when they're little. As they get older, they get a lot more independent. So your job really is going to shift as they grow. And you're going to become, instead of a direct teacher, you're going to become more of a facilitator, more of a guide. I'm there to manage their expectations, to dialogue with them about their learning. I check their work, I keep them making the progress. And so it's really that my time with them is still probably only an hour to hour and a half a day. The rest of it becomes independent work as they grow. But those hours that we spend together when they're doing school, they don't even have to be all like right in a row. And that's one of the beautiful things about homeschooling that I love. You can move it around to meet your needs. So, for an example, my oldest child, she really likes to work in the mornings. So she gets up early before everybody else is awake, and she knocks out a lot of her work. So then at breakfast, I'm like, hey, what did you get done today? And she's already telling me, okay, I got this done and this and this. And I go, awesome. And then we just roll from there. And then I have another child who is a night owl. So he really likes to start his work around 9 o'clock when the little ones are in bed. And then he just works from like 9 to about 10:30 or 11, knocks stuff out. Then he goes to bed. So again in the morning, I'm like, okay, what did you get done? So he tells me when he gets done. So then with my oldest two, we just start rolling from there. They do a lot of that independent work on their own, and I don't have to worry about it as much anymore. And then I can focus more on my younger kids, which is great.
Totally makes sense. So I'm curious, does your routine change with the seasons, maybe like summertime or holiday time? I'm just curious what changes you make as a homeschool mom. And then as you were talking about it
Right.
taking less time than a traditional school day,
Mhm.
it's mom teaching, however many kids you have,
Mhm.
probably not 20 to 30 kids in your own household. So I was thinking it's fewer kids that you're teaching, and it makes sense that it takes less time in that regard as well. But can you talk about the different seasons and flexibility there?
Yeah, sure. So, one of the beautiful things about homeschooling is that you can really truly choose to do it however you want. So, in our home, we actually like the traditional school schedule. So, we tend to follow more of a traditional, like we just took spring break, kind of like everybody else, recently back a little ways ago. And then, we'll take summer break, but you don't have to. I certainly know homeschooling families that school year round. I know some that teach for maybe 9 weeks and then they stop and take a 2 week break. Another 9 weeks, take another 2 week break. Another 9 weeks, take another 2 week break. Some friends of mine that I know, they school really differently. They take all of November and December and January off completely. That's kind of their summer break. And then they school the rest of the year. And they do that so they can intentionally go around and travel and meet family during those holiday months. So you can really just do it however you want as far as your timing. It doesn't have to be set in stone. You don't have to take all the same holidays that public schools take, but you can. You can just make it up and do whatever you want to do, which is great.
So totally customizable. And I love that it's
Yes,
customizable for the family unit, but it's also
yes,
customizable per child. You talked about the different times
yes,
that each of your children thrive in terms of learning. So I
yes.
love that it's customizable and you can personalize it to your family as far as when you do it and how often throughout the year, and customizable for children as well.
That's right.
So, my next question for you, because moms may be thinking right now, okay, well, I'm kind of open to homeschooling, or maybe they just started homeschooling and,
Mhm.
and they're a little lost. So, what about curriculum? How do you know what to teach?
Well, the thing that I really like to tell moms is remember that you are your child's best and first teacher. So you know your child so well. You know them better than anybody else. So you're going to know exactly where they're struggling, but also where they need to be challenged and pushed a little bit. So as you choose your subjects and choose what to teach, you can really customize it to meet the needs of each one of your children individually. And that's one of the most beautiful things about homeschooling. But I like to tell parents that when you think of what to teach, well, first you kind of have to say, does my state have any specific requirements? Because there are some states that do mandate that for you. And in my book, Heading into Homeschool, I actually talk about how do you figure out the legal, because it really, we have 50 different rules in the United States about how to handle that. But in general, you're going to start with your 4 pillars. And your 4 pillars are language arts, math, science, and social studies. And your language arts is going to include reading, writing, grammar, spelling, handwriting in the lower grades, things like that. So those are your four pillars. And every child really has to have those. You can't get away from that, right? You got to start with those as far as what to teach. But then after that, you can really customize it however you want. We think of the extra classes you can throw in, and there's kind of, I like to put them into 5 categories. So the first one would be languages. Like, do you want to teach your child Spanish or Latin or Mandarin, whatever? Fine arts, do you want to incorporate music into your homeschool, theater, art, things like that? You can think about PE, sports and fitness, nutrition. There are a few states I know that actually mandate that PE must be in the homeschool. I think it's Alabama. There's some others too that do that. Um, Life skills is another area you can think about. Things like teaching logic or teaching finance, or maybe I want to teach them sewing or crafting of some sort. And of course, today we want to teach our kids technology. So, do I want to teach them typing skills, things like robotics or coding? And then in our home, we also teach Bible every single day. And for us, that's really not even an elective. That's what we consider our fifth pillar, if you will. We make sure that our kids have Bible instruction every single day. But obviously, that's optional. So, as far as what to teach, it's really the sky's the limit. You can choose. You can choose to follow the Common Core standards. You can choose to follow your state standards, but you don't have to, which is really beautiful. So many parents and families are actually drawn to homeschooling because they don't want to follow those things. Maybe they don't like the new math or whatever. so they can teach more traditionally, more authentically. You have opportunity to instill your values in your child and incorporate God's word maybe into all the different academics that they have to teach. So there's a lot of options as far as what you can teach, but you definitely start with those pillars and then kind of build around there. And if you're wondering, what to teach within that, you talked about curriculum. The good news is that most curriculum actually come with just kind of pick up and go lesson plans. So as a homeschool mom, you don't have to figure out every little piece of what to teach. You can just pick it up and follow what they have there and not have to really be too prepared even. It's not nearly as hard as you might think.
Ooh, I'm sure that's music to some moms' ears. It's
Mhm.
not as hard as you might think. And then opening their eyes to all of the different quote unquote subjects that you can study or allow your child to learn that go beyond those four traditional components and being creative. You talked about Bible being being one of those pillars, but weaving it throughout the different academic areas that you focus on in your home. So
Mhm.
you mentioned curriculum. And now my question is, where do you get your curriculum? And how do you know it's accredited or if there's a state standard that requires certain components? Can you talk through that for us?
Sure, absolutely. So, that's actually one of the questions I get the most frequently is how do you know if it's accredited? And what's funny about that is, you know, it, the law says that most brick and mortar schools and also online schools must be accredited, but homeschools, interestingly, are not. They're not required to be accredited. It's really kind of what I would call a non-issue. It's just something we really don't even have to worry about. No one's going to ask you when you apply for college, was your homeschool accredited? So you don't really even have to worry about that. So if that's something that you've been concerned about it, you can just write that off and not worry about it. But as far as where to find your curriculum, and curriculum is just a fancy way of saying all the books and materials you use, right? Well, both local schools, public schools, private schools, and homeschools, we all get to choose the curricula that we want to meet the needs of our kids. So every school chooses their own curriculum, but oftentimes teachers are not even required to use that curriculum. They can teach their own as long as they're still teaching the standards. And so you have that freedom at homeschool too. But if you are, for example, maybe you're just transitioning from the public schools into homeschool and you want to continue using the same curriculum that you were using at your public school, you can do that. You have that option. You can just go to your child's teacher from last year or whatever and say, "Hey, what was the curriculum adoption that you guys were using for math?" And she'll tell you, and you can go and buy the exact same adoption and you can just continue using it. And you're welcome to do that. But that being said, there are so many amazing curricula that are designed just for homeschool. And there's some real perks to using those because a public school curriculum is going to be designed for a whole classroom full of kids, for 25 kids. Whereas your homeschool materials, they're going to be designed for individual home use. So it's just the child and the teacher, just the child and the mom, one on one. So the activities are going to be different and the way it's taught is going to be different. Some homeschool curriculum is, well, I'll say it was served up family style. Sometimes they're made so you can have a child like maybe in fourth grade and second grade and kindergarten, and the mom can sit down with the children of all the different ages, teach the lesson, and then can kind of take those lessons and dish them out for each child at the level that they're at. So family style is very common in homeschool curriculum too. And so when you buy the homeschool curriculum, you're looking at those different styles, which gives you a lot more flexibility, a lot more freedom, and you can tailor that instruction to really meet the educational needs of your child. So you
That
can figure out what they mean. So it's
that
kind of
totally
your
makes sense.
yeah, it does. And it's your chance, to try something completely different and see if your child thrives in that. But as far as where to find it, I would look for homeschool conferences around you. They're often in the spring. So just in Google, type in homeschool conferences near me and see if something pops up because that's an excellent source of, all the publishers come as vendors and you can look at all the curriculum. In my book, I have a list of all the most popular homeschool publishers, plus lists of where you can find free curriculum. We all love free, right? So where you can find that, and also where you can buy used, because we buy a ton of used stuff. Um, so I think if you're just kind of looking where to start, you're like, oh, I don't even know any of the publishers. I think on my shelf we have Saxon Math, we have teaching textbooks, Sunlight, some Usborne books, some all about spelling, Good and the Beautiful. It's one of my favorite. The Story of the World. So that might get you started as some places you can jumpstart on.
You've shared some excellent resources, and you mentioned the need, and it makes sense to buy the curriculum that you're using in your homeschool. So that does make me curious. Is it expensive to homeschool?
So I would say it can be, but it doesn't have to be. So the analogy I'll use here is it's kind of like buying a car. It depends on the make, the model. Do I want new or used? I can go out and buy a car that's old and maybe has some mileage on it, and I'm not going to pay very much. Or I can go buy a brand new, really expensive car and pay an arm and a leg, right? So homeschooling is kind of the same way. You can actually do it very cheaply, or you can pay a lot. It just depends on what you want. As you mentioned just a minute ago, Carrie, your greatest expense is going to be your curriculum books and on your workbooks, all the different materials that you need. We kind of take it for granted when we send our child off to public school that they cover the cost of those books. But when you homeschool, you do have to provide that for your family. So that is going to be your biggest expense every year. You're probably also going to need some sort of technology, but like, a computer or tablet, but chances are you probably have that already. I think most families do. So you may need some other things like furniture or shelves, but you may not. A lot of families, we homeschool on the couch and the kitchen table. You may need some lab material. That's probably the other place where I know we've had to put out some money in the past. Sometimes you just don't have a microscope or whatever, but you can buy used. You can also recycle your curriculum for the next child. So if you have a lot of children in the family, once you buy it, you can just reuse it for the next child and reuse it for the next child. There's a very robust buying and selling market out there for homeschool curriculum. So it's very easy to find homeschool materials out there that are discounted. But what I always like to tell parents, if you're just transitioning to, is it's not so much about like, oh man, we have to have all this money. Think about how you can reallocate your budget from your current situation to your new homeschooling situation. So here's what I mean by that. Like when you send your child to school, they need lots of clothing, for example. When you homeschool, they're not going to need all those clothes anymore because they're going to be at home. I mean, honestly, if you come to my house tomorrow, my kids are likely to be in their pajamas because we like to homeschool in our pajamas on the couch. It's kind of a homeschool thing, it's what we do. And so a lot of homeschool kids don't need nearly as many clothes as they're used to having. They probably don't need a backpack. They probably don't need a lunchbox. That expensive school supply kit you have to buy at the beginning of every year. You don't really need all that. They make you participate in school fundraisers every year, maybe twice a year, the spring and the fall. And so you don't have to do that anymore. You may be paying for gas to get your kids to school. You don't have to pay for that anymore. You're just staying home. You're probably not going to be running around nearly as often. So you take all of that money that you're going to save and you simply reallocate it into your homeschooling budget. So homeschooling does not have to be expensive. And if that's kind of something that's been holding you back, it should not be a game stopper. It can be done very easily.
Good to know. So being able to utilize resources, think through how you can move things around as far as your budget goes. Especially if you're in the planning stages wanting to transition. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the different aspects of homeschooling. And in the community that I live in, there are a lot of homeschool co ops.
Mhm.
And I know families who attend their homeschool co op once a week. Do you have insights on co ops and how they work and how that might weave into a mom's individual curriculum? Maybe they get an additional curriculum at co op. I'd love to know more about it if you could share.
Yes, absolutely. So, You definitely can attend a co-op. A co-op is really just when you have a group of moms or dads sometimes that come together to teach their children kind of communally. And the way they normally work is almost like a flipped classroom. You usually go to school 1 day a week. And so, for example, we're part of a co-op this year and we go just on Mondays. And so on the Mondays, then the kids are divided up according to like high school, junior high, elementary, kind of depends on how many kids you have. And then different parents teach the subjects that are their strength. So for example, I am not good at the high school sciences. And that was one of the most intimidating things for me about homeschooling. I was like, well, man, when we get up there to high school, what am I going to do? I can't teach biology. I don't know how to do that. But, God bless us with finding this amazing woman she's actually a chemist and she knows all the sciences super well. So she teaches all the high school sciences for me and it's fantastic, but she doesn't really like teaching the little kids. Well, I love the little kids. So I teach the littles and she teaches the olders and it works out beautifully. And that's what the co-op is kind of all about. It's allowing someone else to teach your child in those areas where you maybe feel not as confident or you know that you're struggling a little bit. And so they go to school on Monday, they get their assignments, they work with the teacher, and then the rest of the week they have independent work. But that teacher that they're working with usually is the one who's going to be keeping up with their schoolwork and checking everything and grading them and that sort of thing. So co-ops, I think, can be a wonderful thing if that's something you're interested in.
Okay, thanks for sharing
Mhm.
about co-ops and that potentially as a resource for moms who may feel, they're daunted by a particular subject, or they just
Mhm.
want to come together with other families who are homeschooling in their own community. And now I
Right.
want to shift gears to really what it looks like on a daily basis in terms of communication with our kids. So,
Okay.
as a homeschool mom, how do you get your kids to listen to you? Just doing homework, potentially as a mom listening, may feel just so hard. And maybe their kids are in public school and doing homework is a big ordeal and can be challenging for moms. So it seems like it might be tough to teach your own child, or maybe moms watching right now are having that going through their head. Like, I can't even handle homework. How could I handle a whole school day in the home?
Well, Carrie, I think you're exactly right. It is definitely the toughest part. I think any mom who has ever tried to do homework with their child has felt that frustration of, I can't get this across to them, or they're not listening, or whatever. And as a homeschool mom, I'm not going to lie, it can be really challenging at times to wear those two hats. You're both mom and your teacher. And that can be really hard. But there are some things that you can do. I think that having a firm routine is one of the most important things. You have to set the expectations. It helps when you develop very specific school hours that your child knows we are doing school right now. This is what we're doing. It's not playtime. It's not eating time. It's not, watch TV time or whatever. It is school time. And you teach that routine. You follow the same sequence every single day so they know what to expect. You're teaching the procedures. And then I think something that's on the mom is that you have to really minimize the household distractions. As moms, we look around and we think, oh, there's a pile of laundry over here, and over here the dishwasher needs to be unloaded, and I really need to sweep the floor, and oh, I want to check Instagram. So we do all that, right? But as a homeschool mom, you have to just really focus on your child. And if you model that focusing for them, then they are much more likely to take school seriously and they're likely to focus too. Back when I was a public school teacher, I never would have answered my phone or looked at Facebook during the middle of a school lesson. I would have felt like I would have been reprimanded or dismissed or something. So I give my own children that same courtesy. So when I'm with them, I am focused completely on my kids and helping them to learn. You have to keep in mind that you're molding a child's heart. You're not just packing their head full of information. Homeschooling is all about shaping the whole child. And so that starts with lessons on teaching them respect for authority, obedience, and even submission. And I know that's not really a popular word right now, but Jesus, it says in the Bible, even learned obedience. And that's something that has to be our first lesson when we homeschool is they have to learn how to do school. They have to learn how to take instruction, receive that instruction with a willingness. And as a parent, we have to realize that it is a heart issue, and we have to realize that their character, that godly character, is of much greater worth than if they know their math facts, if they know their state capitals. It is much more important that they know how to learn and receive instruction. And so the way that I like to say it, I have two little sayings that I love that I keep in my head. The first is character over curriculum, and relationships over rigor. And I'm going to say them again just because I think they're so important, but character over curriculum. And so if we're like bumping heads like this, right? And we're fighting about whatever it is, they don't want to do their math or whatever. And that's usually the thing in our house is the math. So that's why I keep saying that. But they don't want to do their math. I think about, okay, hang on, let me take a step back here. It is much more important that they learn how to receive that instruction and have a submissive spirit. And it's much more important that we have gentleness and all those characteristics than the fact that they actually learn this math lesson. The math will still be there tomorrow, but the character is what I need to work on today. And at the end of the day, relationships over rigor. So I want to make sure that my relationship with my child is still intact at the end of the day, at the end of this lesson. So that is of greater importance than making sure that I'm shoving this science lesson down their throat and they have to get it finished. So you have to, as a mom, you just have to really step back and remember what your goals are, what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and think of that big picture that you're really trying to develop their whole heart, not just shove their head full of information.
Makes sense. So good, Amanda. The character over curriculum and then relationships over rigor of subjects, just trying to cram in all the knowledge when shifting, reframing our perspective, knowing that we're shaping the whole child and their hearts is really important in this journey. So we're at a point now in our interview where there may be some moms who have considered in the past or are now considering homeschooling. Maybe they have a child who is preschool age. Maybe they have a child who's in public school or private school and they want to make a transition. So my question to you is, if a mom watching is interested in homeschooling, what are the next steps? How do they even begin this process?
Wow, that could be like a whole nother webinar. But the short answer would be, again, it's not as hard as you think. You can definitely do it, but it is easier if you have a roadmap to follow. And that's one of the things that I'm offering the participants in the Thriving Mom Summit. There's a download that you can go grab, and it lays out for you step by step exactly what you're going to need to get started homeschooling so that you have that roadmap in front of you. It's the exact steps. But before anything else, then make sure you go and download that. And then go jump on my website. I have all sorts of freebies there and blog posts, and they'll answer a lot of your questions about how to get started homeschooling. Um, but the simple roadmap that I'm giving you, it's the exact steps that I took to begin homeschooling, so I know it works. But there's not a lot of space there to go into all the details. So after you grab that, you're going to want to go download a copy of my new ebook, Heading into Homeschool. And there I have all the nitty gritty, all the how to. There's links in there to free downloads. There's actually over 70 links to online resources and sites. So you'll have so much at your fingertips to get you started. And you can find all that on my website, myesthermom.com.
Awesome. Moms, Amanda has you covered. Be sure you take that first step and download the free gift that she's offering to get you started in this journey. And even if you're not interested in homeschooling, just to download it to get some information on maybe a family friend homeschools, just to learn more and to look at the various options that are available to you when it comes to learning and our children. So, with that, Amanda, thank you so much for your time today. This has been wonderful. You shared such great information for moms with regards to homeschooling. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Kerri. It was a joy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I so appreciate it.
You are welcome.